Do you think it's possible to benefit from positivity even when things aren't going your way? Now, there's a lot of science out there that has shown that if you are in a positive mindset, you can achieve better results than if you're in a negative mindset. One of the more famous examples of the science behind this was by Dr. Amy Cuddy, a Harvard professor, who studied her research and shared with her TED Talk that simply standing or sitting in a confident posture for 3 minutes would change the outcomes of the situation you went in next. She proved it with mock job interviews. I find that fascinating, but it works. I was doing it over in the corner before I came out here today. But my message is a little different than that. My message is that I believe that it is possible to benefit from positivity even when what you're going through, the situation you're in, is unimaginable to be positive. And I'd like to share with you my story to explain what I mean. And my story starts with this picture. I love this picture. I'm an avid skier. And if you're an avid skier, this is your happy place. This is a wonderful place to be. Perfect skiing conditions and a perfect day. Now, I love this picture also because it's not the last picture I ever took. About 15 minutes after taking this picture, I skied into a tree. And I shouldn't be here talking to you today. I'd nearly died. Now, when I took the picture, I was sitting on the lift with my brother-in-law, and we were talking about how glorious a day it was, and we were going to ski the bump runs, the large moguls, until our legs fell off. But that didn't happen. About 15 minutes after taking the picture, on our very first run, a groomed, black, steep run, I came out of both skis in the center of the run. Landed on my back and went headfirst down that run, accelerating as I went. And at the bottom of the run turned. I went into a tree, or I went straight right into a 2-foot diameter tree. Now, I had the Ski Tracks app on my phone recording the incident, and it says by the time I hit the tree, I was going 45 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. Now, although it's not the main message of this talk, one of the things I hope to get out of this is that if you're a skier, please wear a helmet. If I wasn't wearing this helmet, I can guarantee you I would not be here talking to you today. I put a hole in the back of it, and this thing did its job, saved my life. So if you're a skier, please wear one of these. Save your life. But even though I had that helmet on, and it did save me, I still suffered a lot of injuries. Enough to deserve a helicopter ride to the hospital in Denver. And when I got out of my initial surgery in Denver, this is what I looked like. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like medical details, get squeezy with that, next 30 seconds would be a good time to cover your ears. Because I had a lot of injuries, any one of which could have killed me, and together compounded, they were much worse. But I had a severe brain injury. I had bleeding between the skull and the brain. I had bleeding inside of the brain, so equivalent of a bunch of mini strokes. I bled into my left eye, could no longer see out of my left eye. I bled into my inner ears. I had very muffled hearing. I damaged the nerve that controls the muscles in your eyes, so my eyes were no longer pointing in the same direction. I crushed my sternum, broke my sternum in several places. I collapsed both lungs, so both lungs filled with blood. I tore a blood vessel behind my sternum that bled into my heart cavity, and my heart could no longer beat properly. And I broke 11 bones. I broke my sternum in several places. I broke 3 ribs, my left arm, and I broke 6 vertebrae. I broke my neck in 2 places, and I broke my back in 4 places. Now, when my wife got to the hospital, and the doctor told her before she came in to see me, doctor saw her, and he told her, your husband is as sick as he can be and still be alive. And then he adds, and he's going to get worse before he gets better. Now, my wife's reaction you might find strange to that statement. But my wife said, "I'll take it." I'm like, "Well, I'll take it." Because what happened was when she arrived at the hospital and went into the emergency room and told them who she was and that she was looking for me, what they told her, they didn't tell her anything about my condition. All they said was, "Mrs. Lawton, if you could, wait here, take a seat in the waiting room, and we'll have the chaplain come and talk to you." And as she walked over to her chair in the waiting room, she's thinking to herself, why would the chaplain come and talk to me? She'd think, man, maybe he didn't make it. And she thought to herself something she thought early that she told me about later that I thought was funny. She said, "Man, if Steve's dead, he's going to be pissed." And it's true, I would have been pissed off if I'd have been dead. I'd have been up there like, "No, put me back down. I can fight for my life. I can get through this." I know I would have. I don't have any recollection of any of that. But I would have been pissed. That gives you kind of a glimpse into my personality and kind of the personality that I had at the time. Now, a lot of people tell me that God saved me. A lot of people tell me that my attitude saved me. And a lot of people tell me that a giant rubber chicken in a purple polka dot bikini saved me. I'd like you to meet Henrietta. This is Henrietta the Good Luck Chicken, and she was sent to us early in my recovery. And it really is hard. She played a big role in my recovery because it's hard to really be upset and mad when you've got a giant rubber chicken around. So she added some levity to the situation that we were in. And she did help me. And although I know you'd like to hear more about Henrietta, I'm going to talk more about my attitude and the role that it played in saving my life. So after one day after the accident, I regained consciousness. 5 days after the accident, I was able to sit up. 7 days after the accident, I had the breathing tube out, and I was again breathing on my own. And it was after I had the breathing tube out when I had an epiphany. And that epiphany, I believe God spoke to me. And he said, "Steve, if you want to live and see your kids again, you need your lungs. And if you want your lungs, you're going to have to fight for them." Now, fighting for my lungs was not easy. It was a painful thing to go do. The doctors and nurses wanted me to breathe into a small device that measured how much air you took into your lungs. And they always gave me a goal that I could never hit. And they asked me to do it once an hour. Deep breaths once an hour. And every time I did it, it would expand my lungs a little bit, but it would also loosen up some of the blood that had collected in the bottom of my lungs. And within a minute of doing those breathing exercises, I would have a violent coughing fit and cough up some of that blood. Now, if you've ever coughed with a bruised rib, maybe you can appreciate how painful it is to have a violent coughing fit with a broken sternum, 3 broken ribs, and a broken back. It was by far the most painful thing I have ever done. And I did it diligently, once an hour. My wife says I did it often more frequently than that. I did it because I knew that's what I needed to do to survive. And it was hard. Now that hard work paid off. 2 days later, I was having an amazing recovery from my lungs perspective. I was nearly completely off of supplemental oxygen by that time. And then I started experiencing shortness of breath. I couldn't catch my breath anymore. Oxygen turned up to maximum now and still couldn't catch my breath. And it was happening, my breathing was degrading rapidly. I was transferred back down to ICU, and I was diagnosed with a bilateral pulmonary embolism. That's where the blood in both of my lungs started clotting and blocking off the blood flow to my lungs into my body. And it's a disease that'll kill you very quickly if not diagnosed and treated in a hurry. I also had the breathing tube put back in me, so I had a machine breathing for me again. And I was injected with blood thinners to break up those blood clots. And the doctors had saved my life once again. Now, I'm convinced, the reason why I could say with confidence that positivity saved my life is that I believe that if I hadn't done those breathing exercises so diligently, that the doctors would not have had the time they needed to diagnose and treat that condition and save me. But being positive all the time isn't always, or isn't easy. It is a very difficult thing to do. When I had that pulmonary embolism, I was in the middle of a tremendous recovery. I'd gone from being nearly dead to 9 days later, almost completely off of oxygen. And then I had this setback where I was back in the ICU and I had the breathing tube back in me. I was devastated. I was doing so good, and now here I was having to almost start over again. I was sad, I was angry, I was disappointed, I was all those things. And it was the only time while we were in the hospital that I saw my wife cry. It was a very hard time for us. But it took about 12 hours for us to sort through those feelings of sadness and disappointment and anger. And we came to the realization by lunch the next day that I was still on that same path. I still had the same goals. I was lucky to be alive again. And all I had to do was get back on that horse and get back on that path that I'd already been on. And I'd already covered a lot of it, so I knew what was in front of me. And so by lunch the next day, I was done with my feeling sorry for myself, my pity party I had for myself, and I was back to the what now mindset. Back to asking the nurses, okay, what's my goal today? Now, people often ask me if I've always been positive. And the honest answer is yes, I've always been a positive person my whole life. And without knowing it, I had been building up my positivity throughout my life, and I was very thankful that I had it when I went into this accident, because it really helped to save me. And when I got home from the hospital 4 weeks after the accident, I wanted to know, I studied the brain because I wanted to know, am I going to recover from my brain injury? Am I going to get better? And what I learned was, yes, that I would recover from my brain injury. All I had to do to recover from my brain injury was practice the places where I was experiencing deficits, like memory recall. All I had to do was practice memory recall, and through a concept called neuroplasticity, I would literally rebuild the structure in my brain that would help me with memory recall. I would build new neuron connections, and I would strengthen the ones that were already there. That's all I had to do. With focus, practice, effort, through neuroplasticity, you can improve. And all of us have that neuroplasticity. We all use it to learn every day. And we can use it for positivity, learning positivity and building positivity circuits in our brain. Because, let's face it, we all experience setbacks. Hopefully they're not as dramatic as the one that I went through. But all of us have these setbacks. And I would argue that the setbacks are one of the most important events that you have in your life because they are the times when you're really growing and learning the most. You wouldn't be who you are today if you hadn't lived through those setbacks. I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't gone through this. And although when we're in the middle of it, it's miserable and we don't ever want it to happen, there are important events in our lives. And I would tell you also, when they happen, you're going to have those feelings of sadness or anger or disappointment, and you can't ignore them. All those are indications that something important is happening to you, and you're going to have to learn something new or do something different than you didn't plan on to get out of it. So don't try to avoid those situations or those feelings. Sit with them, use them to unpack what's going on so you can learn from it, and you can move from that why me to what now? What am I going to do to move forward? So what I'd like to do now is share with you some of the tools and techniques that I use to boost my positivity. Now, since the accident, I've become far more purposeful with my time and with my life. And I'm more purposeful about practicing my positivity and continuing to build up these positivity circuits in my brain. I liken it to physical fitness. When you're physically fit, you benefit from that fitness every day. And if you experience a health crisis, your physical fitness is going to help you through it. Same is true with positivity. It's like fitness for your attitude. When you boost your positivity at that moment, you're going to get benefits from it right then. But you're also building up your positivity and your attitude fitness so that you can use it the next time you suffer a setback or you're being challenged. You can use that positivity baseline, that fitness, to get out of it. So some of the things that I use, like one of them is writing down a gratitude journal, writing down 3 things I'm grateful for every day. Like tomorrow I'm going to be able to write down, I gave a TED Talk. But every day they're not that big. They're not big accomplishments like that means a lot to me. A lot of times they're little things that mean a lot to me. Things like, I had a nice dinner with my family. Or, I was able to help my daughter with her physics homework. Or someone asked me for career advice and they appreciated the advice that I gave them. Or I solved a problem today. Or I learned something new today. All of those are things that make me feel positive, and every time I write them down, I remember them. It boosts those positivity circuits in my brain. And then the next day, as I'm walking through the day and something happens, I go, oh, I'm going to be able to write that down tomorrow. So you're recognizing positivity every day, and every time you do, you're building up those circuits. You can do what Amy Cuddy said, just stand in a confident posture for 3 minutes. That works. You could smile at somebody, and they'll smile back. They can't help it. But when you smile, it boosts your positivity, boosts those circuits. And when you get someone to smile, that does it even more so with you. And it makes them happy as well. You can give someone a specific compliment, like Grayson. Grayson, when I gave this TED Talk at a rehearsal a week ago or so, he gave me some great advice that really helped this presentation. So Grayson, thank you. I appreciate it. It meant a lot to me. When you give someone a specific compliment and tell them what it means to you or the effect that it had, it really helps that person's confidence and boosts their positivity. And it also boosts yours. So my hope is that after hearing my story today, I've encouraged you to practice positivity in your life. Every time you practice positivity, you're not only going to get the benefits right in that moment that you have that positive mindset, you're also going to be building up your attitude fitness so that when you experience that next challenge or setback, you're going to be much more quickly able to use your attitude fitness to move from why me to what now.